like a lot of bootlegs and a lot of bootlegs where nobody was really open. And he just kind of had to throw it away.
Right guard, you can play for that. When it's a quarterback, you kind of need that muscle to throw. So unfortunately, going to put him down for a little bit here. We'll treat it day to day and see how he responds. But want to be smart because he's a thrower, so you can't.
What if the Cleveland Browns already knew who their quarterback of the future was, and it wasn't Dillon Gabriel? From the moment he stepped into the facility, Gabriel was sold to fans as the polished NFL-ready product, the guy you could trust to run the offense without chaos. Safe, clean, controllable. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders was labeled the opposite. Too raw, too flashy, too much spotlight. A project stashed at the bottom of the depth chart. But then the game started, and suddenly, that clean narrative didn't match what fans saw on the field. Gabriel's supposed strengths, his poise, his decision-making, his ability to avoid big mistakes completely unraveled the second real pressure arrived. And the rookie everyone tried to bury? He didn't collapse. He didn't panic. He just quietly did his job.
I can't imagine there's many people that think Dillon Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. And if the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're doing.
I've been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dillon Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Clippers.
So now, one uncomfortable question is circling through Cleveland. Was this quarterback competition ever real, or was the outcome scripted from the start? Because when you strip away the box scores, the media hype, and the pre-written narratives, the story looks very different. And the guy the Browns tried to hide might be the one forcing his way into the spotlight. Before Dillon Gabriel ever threw a single NFL pass, the machine had already crowned him. If you followed the Browns beat writers, tuned into draft coverage, or even scrolled Twitter for 5 minutes, you would have thought Cleveland had landed the next great processor under center. Gabriel wasn't just drafted, he was branded as the safe option, the polished quarterback who wouldn't scare coaches, who wouldn't rattle the front office, and who definitely wouldn't threaten the system. Analysts praised him with buzzwords that sound great in scouting reports but mean very little once the pads go on. Decisive. Sharp.
Gabriel remains in the game and up so far. And this one is
high IQ. The media started calling him a supercomputer on the field, a guy who could process defenses faster than anyone else. Not flashy, not risky, just safe. And in the NFL, safe is the word that gets you opportunities. Safe quarterbacks get more reps. Safe quarterbacks get patience. Safe quarterbacks get every chance to prove the hype right. Now let's compare that to Shedeur Sanders. From the moment he stepped into camp, his reputation wasn't built on strengths, but on doubts. Every minor mistake was magnified. Miss a timing throw in practice? He's not ready. Roll out on a broken play? He's reckless. And instead of being praised for his arm talent, leadership, or ability to extend plays, Shedeur was painted as the flashy distraction, a kid riding his last name and his father's spotlight. The gap between the way these two rookies were covered wasn't subtle, it was glaring. While Gabriel was granted media protection, Sanders was put under a microscope. One was celebrated for what he might be, the other criticized for what he wasn't yet. One was handed first-team reps as a chance to develop chemistry. The other was buried with the third string, given scraps, and told to earn every inch. And if you asked Browns insiders why, the answer was always the same. Gabriel was ready now. But here's the problem, that readiness wasn't proven on the field. It was handed to him. It was a narrative built before his first snap, reinforced by headlines, stats pulled from practice, and glowing sound bites from insiders. Gabriel was marketed like he was already a future starter, and for weeks the story was simple. Dillon Gabriel had the edge, not because he had outperformed anyone, but because the media told you he did. This wasn't just football talk, it was narrative control. The Browns weren't evaluating quarterbacks on equal footing, they were promoting one and dismissing the other before the battle even began. And that's exactly what set up the chaos to come. Because the moment Gabriel finally stepped into a real NFL game, the entire house of cards started to wobble. For weeks, the Browns media circus told fans Dillon Gabriel was untouchable. They said he was polished, NFL-ready, the guy who could step in tomorrow and run the offense like a veteran. And to be fair, when the preseason lights first came on, Gabriel looked every bit the part. His opening drives were clean, sharp, and efficient. Quick reads, safe throws, easy completions. Within minutes, social media lit up with praise. Tweets were flying, analysts were nodding. See? This is why Gabriel is ahead of Shedeur. The hype train had officially left the station. But football has a way of revealing the truth, and it didn't take long before reality punched through the narrative. The same quarterback who was praised for processing defenses faster than anyone else suddenly didn't see the most obvious defender on the field. One throw, one bad read, and it all came crashing down. Gabriel forced a pass into tight coverage without noticing the linebacker sitting directly in the lane. The result? A pick six. Not just a turnover, not just a mistake, a rookie-level error that gave the defense 7 free points and left the coaching staff staring at the ground. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it did. On the very next series, Gabriel botched a routine handoff. No exotic formation, no trick play, just a basic exchange that every quarterback practices thousands of times. The ball slipped, the running back got blamed, and the stat sheet didn't officially credit the fumble to Gabriel, but anyone who watched the tape knew where the responsibility belonged. 2 brutal turnovers in a span of 8 plays. For a guy branded as safe and mistake-proof, it was the exact opposite of what the hype promised. The meltdown was impossible to ignore. At least, it should have been. Because while fans saw the unraveling in real time, the media that had built Gabriel up suddenly went silent. Those same insiders who were live tweeting his early completions suddenly stopped posting when the errors started piling up. The narrative machine that had been humming for weeks broke down in a matter of minutes. And yet, instead of the backlash you'd expect, there was nothing. No viral clips tearing him apart, no fiery columns declaring him unready. The pick six was treated as a footnote, the fumble barely mentioned at all. Now, imagine if those mistakes belonged to Shedeur Sanders, a pick six in his very first NFL drive. He'd be crucified online. A fumbled handoff? He'd be buried in headlines before he even left the stadium. But for Gabriel, the meltdown was brushed aside as rookie jitters. And that's when fans started to wake up. The cracks weren't just in Gabriel's play, they were in the narrative itself. Because if this competition was truly about performance, then how could the so-called NFL-ready quarterback unravel so quickly, while the rookie everyone dismissed quietly stayed poised? When Dillon Gabriel threw that pick six, something strange happened. Nothing. The same voices that had been hyping him all week suddenly fell silent. No meltdown tweets, no viral breakdowns, no fiery hot takes about whether he was NFL ready. For most rookies, that kind of mistake sparks an avalanche of criticism. But Gabriel, he walked off the field with his reputation still intact, as if the interception never happened. That silence didn't go unnoticed. Fans already skeptical about the so-called quarterback battle immediately began calling it out. Screenshots started circulating online posts from earlier in the game, praising Gabriel's surgical decision-making lined up against clips of him staring down a linebacker and tossing the ball straight into his hands. The contradictions were impossible to ignore. The media had hyped him when things looked good, but when reality hit, they hit the mute button. Now, compare that to how Shedeur Sanders was being treated. Every snap he took was dissected to death. A scramble on a broken play? Reckless. A throw slightly off timing with a backup receiver? Not ready. Even in practices where he protected the ball and showed composure, the headlines weren't about progress, they were about flaws. It was as if Gabriel was given the benefit of the doubt, while Shedeur was being graded like a 10-year veteran. And the fans saw it. Twitter threads and Reddit posts started piling up, pointing out the double standard in real time. One side of the battle was being shielded, the other was being exposed. The excuses for Gabriel came quickly. Rookie jitters. Teachable moment. Just one mistake. But when it came to Shedeur, those same mistakes weren't teachable, they were fatal. This wasn't just about stats anymore. It became about trust. Fans weren't just watching quarterbacks on the field, they were watching narratives being manufactured off it. And when those narratives didn't match what people were seeing with their own eyes, the backlash grew louder. For every Gabriel supporter trying to spin his errors as part of the learning curve, there were 10 Shedeur fans pulling receipts, reminding everyone that the same patience was never granted to him. Even former players began weighing in subtly, pointing out the uneven coverage. One tweet that went viral summed it up perfectly. Funny how Shedeur's reps get questioned even when he hasn't thrown a pick. That single line captured the entire problem. The scrutiny wasn't equal and the silence wasn't accidental. By the end of the week, the story wasn't just about who played better, it was about who the media wanted to win. And that shift changed everything. Because once the fans stop listening to insiders and start comparing notes with each other, the manufactured narrative doesn't just crack, it collapses. On paper, Dillon Gabriel's preseason debut didn't look half bad. 13 completions on 18 attempts, 143 yards, 1 interception. If you never watched the game, you might even think, that's efficient, that's solid for a rookie. But here's the problem, box scores lie. And in Gabriel's case, they lie loudly. Let's start with the completions. 13 throws sounds impressive until you realize most of them were safe. Scripted plays designed to make life easy. Quick outs, checkdowns, rollouts to the flat. Nothing that tested defenses, nothing that proved he could actually read the field. Coaches love rookies who can execute those simple concepts, but fans know the difference between manufactured efficiency and genuine command of the game. Now let's talk about the yards. 143 looks respectable until you notice where those yards came from. The bulk of them were front-loaded. Gabriel started hot, moving the ball with short passes that picked up chunks early. But as the game wore on and defenses adjusted, his production collapsed. When the pressure built, the throws got shaky, the reads got slower, and the confidence faded. The stat sheet doesn't tell you that the momentum dried up the moment defenses forced him to play outside the script. And then there's the interception. The box score calls it one mistake. But it wasn't just one. It was a pick six, the single most damaging type of turnover a quarterback can make. That's not something you brush off as a rookie learning moment. That's the kind of play that changes games, flips momentum, and forces coaches to question if their guy can handle real NFL speed. But instead of acknowledging it for what it was, a disastrous rookie-level read the narrative spun it into something softer, something forgivable. And let's not forget the fumbled exchange. It didn't show up in Gabriel's turnover column, so if you only looked at the numbers, you'd never know it happened. But coaches saw it, fans saw it, the running back who got saddled with the blame definitely saw it. That single mistake may not live in the box score, but it lives in the film. And film is what coaches trust. So while Gabriel's numbers look fine on paper, they're hiding the truth. The interceptions, the fumbles, the collapse under pressure, those aren't footnotes, they're red flags. And when you compare that to Shedeur Sanders, the contrast is even sharper. Shedeur didn't have gaudy stats. He didn't get the reps or the spotlight. But what he did have was something Gabriel couldn't fake: control. No turnovers, no panic, no costly errors. Because at the end of the day, box scores can fool fans, but they can't fool the game. And the game told a different story than the numbers did. While Dillon Gabriel was handed first-team reps, scripted drives, and media protection, Shedeur Sanders was given almost nothing. No spotlight, no safety net, and certainly no special treatment. He spent camp buried on the depth chart, often working behind third and even fourth-string offensive lines. His receivers weren't the polished starters Gabriel was throwing to, and his reps were limited to a handful of snaps that rarely made the highlight reels. For most rookies, that kind of setup is a death sentence. You can't prove yourself when you're running plays with backups who might not even make the roster. And yet, Shedeur flipped that disadvantage into something far more valuable: calm. Where Gabriel forced throws and tried to justify the hype, Shedeur played within himself. He didn't chase highlights. He didn't press. He simply protected the football, managed the pocket, and made smart decisions in chaos. Against faster defenses, with less protection, he stayed composed. No turnovers, no panic, just solid quarterback play. Fans started to notice the little things. Clips surfaced online of Shedeur's pocket presence sliding away from pressure, keeping his eyes downfield, and delivering accurate throws even when defenders were closing in. Others pointed out his body language, how he carried himself in the huddle, how he never looked rattled after a broken play. These weren't the kinds of moments that show up in a stat sheet, but they were the kind of details that scream NFL ready if you know what to look for. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Gabriel had the headlines, the early stat padding, and the PR machine in his corner, but when the lights came on, he cracked. Shedeur had the silence, the skepticism, and the long odds stacked against him, and yet he didn't flinch. That difference hit fans hard. Because in the NFL, talent matters, but so does trust. Coaches can't trust quarterbacks who hand points to the defense. They can, however, trust the ones who protect the ball and keep their team in games. What really fueled the buzz was that Shedeur didn't need to do anything flashy to stand out. He didn't need a 70-yard bomb or a highlight scramble to win people over. All he needed was composure. In a league where rookies often sink themselves with turnovers, his ability to play mistake-free football became his calling card. And that was more than enough to turn heads. By the end of that preseason game, the conversation had shifted. Fans weren't asking if Shedeur could survive the NFL, they were asking why he wasn't getting real chances to prove it. The kid who was supposed to be a project suddenly looked like a player coaches could trust right now, and the quiet poise he showed in the shadows was starting to outshine the bright spotlight that had been handed to Gabriel. At the start of camp, the storyline was simple. Dillon Gabriel was the Browns' rookie to watch, while Shedeur Sanders was just another late addition. But that narrative didn't survive long. The moment Gabriel's performance was put under the microscope, cracks turned into gaping holes. Fans, analysts, and even rival players began questioning the hype, and once doubt starts creeping into a quarterback's reputation, it spreads like wildfire. The interception was the turning point. Social media lit up with clips of the pick six, replayed from every angle. Commentators didn't just call it a mistake, they called it rookie panic. Hashtags popped up, memes flooded Twitter, and suddenly Gabriel wasn't the promising rookie with solid numbers. He was the guy who gift-wrapped a touchdown for the defense. The narrative flipped almost overnight, and perception collapsed faster than his pocket presence. Meanwhile, something else was happening. As Gabriel's image took hits, shadows began to rise. Clips of his calm throws under pressure started going viral, and fans began drawing comparisons that Browns media never expected. Why does Shedeur look more comfortable than the guy they've been hyping for months? If Sanders is this poised behind backups, what could he do with starters? The questions got louder, and the more they spread, the harder it became to ignore them. Analysts joined the conversation too. On talk shows and podcasts, they began pointing out the difference between statistical performance and game impact. Gabriel had numbers, but Shedeur had trust. And in the NFL, that difference is everything. Analysts even noted how the locker room seemed to respond to Sanders. Teammates rallied around him, celebrated his completions with more energy, and praised his calm demeanor in post-practice interviews. That kind of organic support can't be manufactured. It's earned. The pressure on Gabriel only grew. Every practice rep became a test. Every incompletion was amplified. And because his reputation had taken such a public hit, the spotlight burned hotter. Shedeur, on the other hand, thrived in the shadows. With no expectations, every good throw felt like a bonus, every mistake easily forgiven. It was the perfect setup for an underdog rise, and fans love nothing more than an underdog who exposes the so-called favorite. By the end of the week, the Browns' rookie quarterback conversation wasn't about Gabriel leading the future. It was about whether the front office had overlooked the real gem. What was once framed as Gabriel's spotlight became the story of his collapse and Shedeur's steady rise. And when the narrative flips like that, there's no going back. Because in the NFL, perception is reality. And once a quarterback loses the public's trust, earning it back can be even harder than winning a game on Sunday. When the dust settled, the story wasn't just about two rookies battling in training camp. It was about what their journeys revealed about the NFL itself. Dillon Gabriel entered with all the advantages media support, reps with the starters, and a narrative crafted to make him the next face of the Browns. Yet when the lights got bright, the pressure cracked his foundation. Shedeur Sanders, on the other hand, entered as the overlooked rookie, the one buried on the depth chart with little chance to shine. But instead of fading, he thrived in the chaos, showing poise beyond his years. This clash exposed a truth fans already suspected. Hype doesn't win games, composure does. Gabriel had the headlines, but headlines can't hide turnovers. Shedeur had no spotlight, but his calm, mistake-free football forced people to pay attention. And in a league where every decision is scrutinized and every throw can swing momentum, that difference carries more weight than flashy preseason numbers ever could. It also speaks to a bigger theme: how the NFL often underestimates players who don't fit the narrative. Shedeur wasn't supposed to be in this conversation. He was supposed to sit quietly, wait his turn, and maybe get a chance years down the line. But football doesn't work that way. The field doesn't care about draft slots or media hype. It rewards the ones who step up when chaos hits. And that's exactly what Shedeur did. For the Browns, this created an unexpected dilemma. Do they stick with the quarterback the front office and media have invested in? Or do they acknowledge what fans and players are already seeing, that Shedeur might actually be the steadier hand under center? It's a decision that could shape the future of the franchise, and the tension around it is only growing louder. But beyond Cleveland, this story resonates with the entire NFL. Every season, there's a quarterback who looks great on paper but can't survive when the pressure mounts. And every season, there's an overlooked underdog who forces their way into the spotlight. This time, that underdog was Shedeur Sanders. And if his early poise is any indication, he may not just be a camp surprise, he may be the quarterback nobody saw coming until it was too late to deny it. Because at the end of the day, the NFL doesn't care about who was supposed to succeed. It only cares about who actually does. And in this battle, the guy who started in the shadows may just walk away with the future in his hands.